everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have my October wrap-up. This to be a small video for some reason. I know I read stuff, but at the same time it feels like I didn't read a ton, and yet we have 24 books to talk about today. I read 4,077 pages, which is technically my second highest amount of pages for the entire year. January, which was my previous second highest, was 4,071. And this time I read 4,077. Like, I was not aware that I did that until now. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about a lot of stuff today. Let's go down to hours listened. I only listened to 11.1 hours for audiobooks, which is pretty good. Not like my top at all, but still pretty good. And then let's go down to more stats. So, for the reading method, 20 of the books that I read were physical, 3 were audiobooks, and 1 was an ebook, which is very different than what I've done for most of the year, especially after moving. For the genre, 11 of them were fantasy, 5 were horror, 5 were contemporary, 2 were paranormal, and 1 was romance. For the book format, 12 of them were graphic novels, 5 were manga, so that's probably why I got a lot of stuff in. 6 were novels, and then 1 was a short story collection, which I think that short story collection was actually the longest thing that I read this year. It was a lot of short stories. Let's go into indie versus traditional. 2 of them were indie published, where 22 were traditionally published. How I got it, 11 of them I borrowed from my library. 6 of them were rereads. 3 were books that I owned prior to this year, 3 were books that I bought this year, and 1 was an ARC. As for the age category, 11 were adult, 1 was new adult, and 12 were young adult. So almost a pretty even split here. And then let's go into the star ratings. So my average was 4.02, which is pretty good. However, my books ran the gamut of all the ratings. So we did have 2 DNFs, 1 2.5 star, 2 3 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 3 4 stars, 3 4.5 stars, and then 10 5-star reads. So I did have some really good reading, but I had basically everything possible. I didn't have any 2s, which I don't give out very often unless something is like horrible. And I didn't have any 1.5s, but I don't think I've ever given out any 1.5s. So yeah, I did have some really good things, but I had a very big range of things as well. So like I said before, we do have 24 books to talk about. Some of these things are in series, so if we get to that, we will talk about a series at a time, not just like individual books. So we will do that. But let's jump into it. We're gonna start with the lowest rated, or I guess technically my DNFs, and then go up to my favorite book of the month. So starting with those DNFs, the first one I have here is Whisper of Death by Christopher Pike. This was a book that I picked during a mini TBR game where I had to pick a book that I was thinking of unhauling, and I wasn't like actively thinking of unhauling this. However, I did not like it. I did not get very far in here. I do have it listed. What did I do? I got 38 pages into this book when I decided to DNF. Basically, the back talks about Roxanne and Pepper, a teenage couple who have problems. They leave town to solve those problems, and when they come back, the town is basically empty. Nobody is there. They do find a few other people, and it is possible that the reason they're all there is a girl named Betty Sue who previously committed suicide, wrote stories about them, and those stories are going to come to life. Well, I'm gonna give spoilers because I don't care. The reason that Roxanne and Pepper have to leave the town is because they had sex, she got pregnant, and they want to have an abortion. So this ends up being like they go there to do that. There is like medical stuff, which made me a little bit uncomfortable, just the way it was like framed. But also Roxanne does just change her mind like in the middle of the procedure and decides to leave without having the abortion, and then that's when they go back to town. The thing is, I did look up reviews and things after the fact of this because I just did not like the way a lot of the phrasing and stuff was, and I had ideas of where this was going, and let me tell you, I was right. This is sort of a, like, weird dying from having an abortion fever dream, and there's mention of rape and suicide, obviously. It just did not feel right to read this, especially because they're having talk of, like, the reason that she has to have an abortion, and, like, the way that they're framing it is very, like, anti-abortion type of stuff. It's just not my thing. I did definitely DNF it, and it does not seem to be, like, a very good portrayal of that kind of stuff, and so yeah, we will be unhauling this eventually. The other DNF that I had was How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. This is something that I borrowed from my library on audiobook. The audiobook narrator was great. However, this one is purely a case of this is not for me. I thought it sounded very intriguing when I first heard of this. Like, I know I talked about it in a new releases video at some point in time. And I've had it on hold for my library for a while because it was a new release, very popular for audiobook. You know, people had lots of holds on it. It's basically about this woman who is originally from Earth and gets taken to a fantasy world. Her name is Dobby, which is weird for a normal name that is not a fantasy name. And she's sort of like in a Groundhog's Day situation where she goes into this world and she's told that she's going to be the savior of the humans against the wildlings, but stuff goes wrong, she dies, she comes back where she first originally came back in this world. The thing is, it's very like breaking the fourth wall. There is no fourth wall. She's literally telling us her story. We come into it at the beginning of her like 260 something life. She's fed up. She curses constantly. I got 25 pages into this one, and I want to say she cursed at least 25 times. And that's not necessarily to say a bad thing. I curse all the time, but I think it was the fact that she's supposed to be from Earth. She's supposed to have been in this world for a while. She's fed up with it, and she's just telling us all these things. She also kills people, committed suicide for one of her Groundhog's Day things. There was a thing at the beginning of the book saying, hey, there are graphic depictions of this kind of stuff going on. Had suicide helpline numbers and things. I did appreciate that, but I think it was trying to be too meta and breaking the fourth wall-esque, and like her telling us about this fantasy world and fantasy conventions and things like that, where I just like did not care. And the way the writing came off, because it's literally her and her thoughts in her head and her talking to us, like, it's not me reading a story, it's her talking about stuff, and like I said, breaking the fourth wall or having a non-existent fourth wall is just not something that I'm going to be able to do for a whole like 300 or 400 page book. So I did DNF that, and that, again, like I said, was purely something that I did not like. It reminded me a lot of I Hate Fairyland by Scotty Young, which people do really enjoy, and I did not, because it had that same sort of character who is in this fantasy world and does not like being in the fantasy world, and things keep going wrong for them, and it's very crass, and it was just, again, not my thing. Other people like that, so I do think this will find its audience. It was just obviously not for me. Let's move down to my 2.5 star. This means it's a book that I finished, did not like actively did not like, maybe not necessarily hating on it for any specific, like, this was a bad thing, like, there was no necessarily racism or homophobia or things like that. I just did not like it. And that is going to be I Am Hexed by Kirsten Thomas and some other illustrators and things. This is a book that I funded on Kickstarter, and the reason that this got read is it was a lowest rated prompt for my TBR game, and let me tell you, I agree. I did not like this one. I don't think it was necessarily a 2-star, which is why it was a 2.5. The art style looks really cute. It does change a few times because we have different artists in here. But my biggest problem with this is I just don't understand what is sort of going on. We have these two characters that are our main characters. We have a third character who has a cane and a wheelchair, so I liked the disability rep. These are exes. Like, I think she's actually bi as well because she has a male ex as well, and so I like the representation that we have in here. But the biggest thing about this is witchcraft is sort of looked down upon like when people are having big protests over like LGBTQ rights or Black Lives Matter and stuff. So like they are sort of a stand-in for almost any single minority or type of people who people have thoughts on and prejudices on that shouldn't be happening, but in this world they just don't like people that have magic. But it's very much written in a way that it's supposed to be like Black people or LGBTQ or, you know, any sort of like other religion that's not Christianity and like that kind of thing. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that it felt too generic for those type of issues, and we didn't really get an explanation of why some of these people are prejudiced besides, oh, well, they have magic and I don't. There wasn't like any other sort of thing. So it was supposed to be like a political type of story, but they just didn't like magic. That is one issue that I had with it. The other is that there didn't feel to be any stakes because everything just happened too quickly. Even the like ending where they have a sort of conclusion was too tied up with a bow and didn't have enough detail. So it just felt sort of like performative in the like, we need to tie this up now. Like I didn't understand why it was happening. So I think this thing just needed a little bit more development, a little bit more characterization, a little bit more of everything possible to make me like it, because like the idea of it sounded good, but the way that they were using magic as a reason why people hate you, when the way that they were framing it was very, very similar to police brutality against Black people and that kind of stuff. Like I did not like that aspect. So this will also be getting rid of eventually. Let's move into my 3-star reads. The first one I have here is The Nightmare Before Kissmas by Sarah Rosh. So this was my arc. I was very, very excited to read this because it is mentioned as sort of like a red, white, and royal blue meets The Nightmare Before Christmas. I didn't really get that. This is not, in my opinion, a rom-com or romance at the focus. We do have the Christmas prince and the Halloween prince having a sort of secret relationship, but it definitely takes a backseat to this weird political holiday stuff. And when I say weird political holiday stuff, one of the things, I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler for people or not, but it's a very big part of the book, is that the King of Christmas, or this sort of like Santa character, is a tyrant. And I just did not like that sort of aspect because it felt like that political nature of the holidays took over what was supposed to be a romance type of thing. And it was very heavy-handed. Like it was so much in your face that I didn't care for that. The other part of this that I did not like was the sort of writing style, voice of the characters. The Christmas Prince character and even his brother and like their friend who's like the Easter princess is very like humorous in a way that is a little bit too much. I think this would be better as an audiobook because the way that it was written had a lot of like things that you say out loud don't always translate well into text because of like the way that you can go from like one thought to another very, very quickly. And that happened in this book where it felt like people having a conversation, but it was hard to read and keep my mind wrapped around it because we would sort of jump to like, oh, this happened, but hey, let's talk about this, and then he interrupted him, and then he thought about a joke that was an inside joke. Like, it was just a little bit too much trying to be funny in that sort of way, trying to be witty and quick and banterful, and I think it didn't work in text. I do think, like I said, it might be better as an audiobook, but in general, I went in expecting a happy holiday rom-com type of thing, and the dating romance stuff took a back seat. Like, the whole premise was supposed to be Christmas and Halloween were fighting over the Easter princess, but then like doing a fake dating type of thing, and it was just so much on the back burner to this political stuff that I was really hoping for more fun, and it wasn't. Then the next 3-star I had was He Hears Death by A.L. Davidson. I actually did do a vlog where it was sort of like just random stuff that I was reading in October, and this was one of the books that I picked. I will leave a link down below in case you're curious. This is another one that I funded on Kickstarter. It is indie published, and it's sort of like a paranormal semi-horror type of thing, where all the characters are talked about without names, talked about like with tarot card names. So our main character is the Fool, his deceased husband is the Lover, his boss I think is Judgment, we have his friend who is Temperance, and basically he is an embalmer who works at a mortuary, and he is deaf or hard of hearing, and he can hear death. So people that have died and have turned into ghosts, he can actually hear them. I thought it was a very interesting concept. However, I do think because it was a very quick 150 pages, it needed a little bit more substance, a little bit more characterization. It did take me a little while to figure out that he was hard of hearing or deaf, and they do use some ASL, but there were times that I thought at the very beginning of the story he was hearing things that weren't just death, and I didn't understand that he only hears death like loudly. So I don't know if it was me not understanding the concept right away or the way that the story was done. I did really like the concept of it. However, we did have some part at the end where it just felt a little bit rushed into for the finale. I didn't see anything coming of like what happened, and I wished we would have had a little bit of foreshadowing because it just felt out of left field just to get the story over with. We also have this character dealing with grief for sure, but also potentially anxiety and depression. However, because we have paranormal elements in here, I couldn't 100% tell if we were actually dealing with a paranormal entity that was embodying anxiety and grief and depression and things like that, or if it was very poetically introduced that way, because the writing style of this is not my thing. It is very poetic and purple prose, in my opinion, very much filled with similes and metaphors and things comparing to other things that hurt my brain sometimes. Like, this is just not my writing style. I know it is for some people. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, because I actually forgot to mention it in my vlog, but I really liked the formatting of this, because there are some pages where we have like different things like step, step, step. Like, I really, really liked that. However, we do also have parts that are very, very faint because it's supposed to be, I guess, sort of like stuff he can't fully hear. My biggest issue is the color of the font is so faint that I almost couldn't read it. Like, literally. So you're going from him having hard of hearing and putting it in there, which is a very, very fun aspect, but there are some pages that are like, it's so faint and it's important stuff, and I could not read it easily. So you're making it almost feel like I'm blind. I don't know if that was the point, but there was a lot of parts where it's so faint. So like, I liked the idea of this. I think some people are really gonna love it. The writing style was not for me. It was too metaphor heavy, and I really do love the concept of like the text and how things are going, but I couldn't read some of it. Okay, so now we're going to be moving to my 3.5 stars, as well as one of the 4-star, because we're going to be talking about a series. I read the first 4 volumes of The Woods by James Tynion IV. I gave volume 1 4 because I thought it was a very solid concept, but I gave the next 3 3.5 because I don't think they did as well as volume 4. I don't necessarily think they were a 3. 3s for me are a little bit middle of the road. I'm gonna forget about them very, very quickly. I don't think I'm necessarily gonna forget about this, but I didn't get enough answers to like really think these were solid and getting better with each volume. So this is following a group of teenagers who they're in school, and their whole school gets abducted, teachers and all, to an alien planet. They're in the middle of these woods on this alien planet, and there's alien stuff, there's dangerous monsters and things like that. There's other people who have also been kidnapped throughout time, so we have very interesting elements. One thing I loved is the fact that James Tynion IV includes a lot of people of color and LGBTQ characters, and like, I really do love that because he does that quite often. So I liked the idea of these characters a lot. There were some that I really, really liked and I wanted to know more about. My biggest issue with this, and the reason that I couldn't give the further volumes in the series higher stars, is that a lot of different concepts and things are introduced in each volume, it seems like, and I just do not have any answers for anything that's going on. So I'm at the point where, like, right now I needed to take a break from it. I will probably go back later and try again with some of the later ones, because the first 3 volumes is one story arc. The 4th volume is starting another story arc, but again, I just didn't get enough. Like, even that first story arc, it ends and I'm like, oh, I think that was a story arc, but I didn't get enough to feel satisfied from it ending. You know what I mean? So I'm very curious about the world and the setting, and I really like some of the characters, and I really want to know more about them, but each volume is not giving me enough. Like, this is a comic series that then got published in volumes. I don't know how I would have ever read this as individual issues, because I'm just not getting enough even from volumes to, like, say, oh yeah, that issue would have been great. I want to know more, but I don't think the execution is as good as I was hoping. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to talk about is another series that has a few different ratings. I also did a vlog for this, so I will leave a link down below, but at the very end of October, going into Halloween, I did a vlog about Dragon Age stuff that you could read going into Dragon Age the Veilguard. The Dragon Age the Veilguard is the newest game, came out on Halloween, and it is something that is made for, you can just play it if you want to without having to know everything else, but I will say I've played 11 hours of it now over the last like 5 days since it came out, and there are like little cameos of people from the comics and the short story collection going into the game. So again, you don't have to read these things, but it was really fun to see. So I do have 5 books in this first series. So the first book in this series was Dragon Age Mage Killer. This one is by Greg Rucka, and I gave this a 4. It was a reread for me. The second book was Dragon Age Knight Errant. Every other book now is by Nunzio de Philippis. I gave this a 5. Then we had Dragon Age Deception. I gave this a 5. Then we had Dragon Age Blue Wraith. I gave this a 4.5. And this is also a reread. All of those were rereads. And then the finale was Dragon Age Dark Fortress. This is a book that I actually purchased this year to read it. I have not read this one previously, so this was new for me, and I gave this a 4. So basically, these are sort of individual stories, at least for the very beginning, but they do have characters that overlap. So Mage Killer has 2 different mage killers, Tessa and Marius, and they do show up in later books in the series. Knight Errant has Vea and Sir Aaron, and they also show up in the series, and as they're going through, they're trying to figure out different things that is happening with Red Lyrium. Solus potentially is looking for it, but also the Venatori and Kunari and everything like that. This is from, the first book is set during Inquisition, everything else is set after Inquisition, obviously, sort of leading up to the Veilguard. And I liked seeing the characters over and over again. I did think the finale, and I think maybe because I was looking at it as a lead up to Veilguard, I didn't think the finale was as good as I was hoping for, but otherwise they're very solid Dragon Age comics. They are canonical, so they are canon for the series and everything. They were very fun, and like I said, yeah, I found yellow. And like I said, I did have a vlog for that in case you're curious. Moving into another 4.5, I read Insomniacs After School Volume 7 by Makoto Ojiro. This one is a 4.5 out of this whole series. So I read volumes 1 through 6 last month in September for the 30 and 30 manga challenge, and I gave all of those 5 stars. This one I gave 4.5, and I think it's because it just sort of felt like a middle book almost. We were just like after everything that happened in volume 6, and I was hoping for a little bit more. It was still really cute. I did like the second half of the manga volume better than the first half, and I definitely want to continue. I think this is the most recent volume out in English. Like, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's really adorable how these characters come together and we get them and their friendship and their sort of start of a blossoming relationship, but also their other friendships with people in school. But it follows 2 characters in high school who are both insomniacs for different reasons, and they come together to restart the astronomy club at their school because they're up all night anyway. And I just really like the characterization and stuff. Like, I want to see more. I want to find out what happens in their lives. It's just, this one wasn't as good, and I just couldn't give it a full 5. I just needed a little bit more, but I'm so excited to read more in the series. Then we're going to talk about a 4.5 as well as a 5-star because, again, same series. I finished the Raven cycle, so I did reread Blue Lily Lily Blue by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a reread for me. I gave it 5 stars, and then I finished with The Raven King, which I had never read before, and I gave it 4.5. I was addicted to both of these. I listened on audiobook. I think the audiobook narrator is amazing. And I did give, like I said, Blue Lily Lily Blue 5 stars. I feel like it went back to its roots from like the Raven Boys, because the Dream Thieves I feel like is a really different tone that I don't like as much, but I think this really comes together. Everything from this series grows. So like book 1 is Blue meeting the boys and they decide that they're gonna find Glendower and all this kind of stuff, and like from there everything has just grown bigger and bigger and bigger with the magic and the fantasy and like what's gonna happen. There's more characters, there's more stuff, and I really like the tone of this one. And then for this one I could not give a full 5 stars, and it's mostly because I was addicted to this. I really wanted to finish it and know what was going on. Like, I really loved the tone of it. Like, everything was so good, especially, like I said, the audiobook was amazing. However, it ends too quickly, and like I don't feel like we got done with everything. So like everything that it is leading up to, like the search for Glendower, I was disappointed in the ending for that. The whole like Blue is going to kill her first love with a kiss, the ending for that, everything just didn't end the way I thought it was going to. Not even like the way I thought it was going to. I was just hoping for a better ending. Like, we get introduced to Piper and all that kind of stuff in Blue Lily Lily Blue, which I really, again, found myself enjoying, even though probably not the best part of the books to enjoy. But the ending for Piper in here was, again, disappointing. So I liked the tone, I liked the writing style, I like a lot of this. Like, I really didn't want to put it down. I was really enjoying my time with it, but every single ending we got, I didn't enjoy. Okay, so now that leads us into all the rest of the 5 stars that I have. So everything else is going to be a 5-star read. So the next one I have here is another Dragon Age. This one is a separate series from the previous ones that I was talking about, so that's why we're mentioning it here, because it was a 5-star for me. I really enjoyed this one. This is a comic series following Varric and Harding as they meet Nev and get into the like, let's find Solus, figure out what he's doing, and it leads directly into Dragon Age the Veilguard. So like, they're trying to find Solus. It takes them a few different places. I like the introduction of the Veil Jumpers, which is a faction in the game. I really like the introduction of the Shadow Dragons and Nev, who are a faction and character in the games. And at the very end of this story, it does say, I think we, as Varric and Harding, are a little too close to Solus because they knew him from Inquisition, so let's bring in somebody new. And so that's introducing the fact that they're going to bring in Rook, who is you, and at the beginning of Veilguard, you've been with them for a little while trying to find Solus. So I do like that this was a good bridge into that. I think if you're looking at it as a separate comic, not leading into Veilguard, it might have needed a little bit more, because it's literally just them going to different places and meeting people and trying to find Solus. But for what it was, and me reading it intentionally going into Veilguard, I really enjoyed it. It does have like 3 or 4 distinct art styles in here, which I know some people don't like the jump around of art, but I didn't mind it too much. Then we also have more Dragon Age that I talked about in the vlog. This is Dragon Age Tevinter Nights. This was a reread for me, and this is the short story collection, almost 500 pages with 15 short stories. I did go into depth and spoilers in this, but I gave it 5 stars back when I read it as an ARC in 2020. I gave it 5 stars again. I really enjoyed the look into the Dragon Age world with different kinds of stuff. Some of these stories are more horror, some of these stories are more mystery. There was one that's very similar to like almost like an Agatha Christie type of thing. Like, I really enjoyed this. And again, the last couple stories in here also go directly into trying to find the Dreadwolf and Solus and things like that. So I can't complain. Then the next 4 5 stars that I have are Sakura Saku by Ayo Sakisaka. I feel like I give Ayo Sakisaka 5 stars quite often. I really love her stories and characters, and I got the same thing with this. Basically, we follow a girl named Saku who needed some help on a train station platform one day, and the only thing she was left with was a note. I think it said like, the person who helped her was like Ryosuke Sakura, and she finds out that there is a boy at her school. I can't remember his first name right now, but he is a Sakura. Ryosuke was like his brother, and they sort of have this like blossoming friendship because Ryosuke saved her, that kind of thing. I really have been enjoying this because it is very much like a coming of age school type of story. There is a little bit of like hints of first love romance type of stuff. One of the books, I think it was volume 3 or volume 4, also had a hint of a character being LGBTQ, like sapphic as well. I just like the idea of these characters being in high school and figuring out themselves, and I think Io Sakisaka does very good work that way. I definitely want to read more. I borrowed these from the library, but I'm gonna have to own them myself at some point in time. They're just very cute and wholesome, and definitely like shoujo romance type of stuff, like 100% enjoying them. And then we only have one more book to talk about, and that is going to be the favorite book of the month. And it's Fangs by Sarah Anderson. This was a book that somebody told me to read last year or the year before, but it's only really available as like a hardcover book, and so for it being what it is, like short comic type of stuff, I never bought it. But I did see it at my library, and because it was October and this is basically about a vampire trying to date a werewolf, I got it. And let me tell you, it was the cutest thing possible. I absolutely loved the art style and the characterization, and every single like story is only like a page or two, maybe a couple more than that, but it's like really short little comics about this vampire and werewolf basically dating and stuff like that. Like, I loved seeing little panels of her scratching his ears when he is in his werewolf form, or like them going out in the sun and her having the parasol umbrella and like head to toe like outfit. Like, it was just really cute. Like, there's nothing bad I could possibly say about it, I guess, except for the fact that like for the type of story that it is, it's a little bit overpriced because it's a hardcover and stuff like that, and that's the only reason I hadn't read it before now. But I absolutely loved it. Whoever it was that told me I was supposed to read that, you hit the nail on the head. That was just, it was just adorable. So that is going to be it from me today. Let me know what your favorite book of October was, just because I'm curious. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out on Tuesdays and Thursdays only right now, because I am also playing video games. So I will see you then. Bye!